Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to our live interview, which is gonna, part of our Women's Week activity this week, celebrating Women's Day during the first week of March. So we have the privilege to have with us the chairman and group CEO of MakeMyTrip, Kalra, somebody who doesn't really need an introduction for many of us who have had the opportunity to meet him and hear him in many forums. He started MakeMyTrip in 2000, and he actually took the company NASDAQ public in 2010. I think he's an entrepreneur that is a role model for many of us who are entrepreneurs, but also a role model for many HR professionals who have heard his passion of building culture, his passion of building great teams, and a beautiful quote he has on his profile on the Make My Trip website. He says it's really about the zeal of achievement, and it's not about winning, but it's about dominating. So it's a pleasure to have you with us, Deep. Very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Esther. It's my pleasure. I'm so glad I can do this. It's wonderful talking to you and actually interacting with the organization at all points of time. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So the conversation, as you know, Deep, we wanted your point of view, especially this week where we are celebrating Women's Day, and many organizations are really looking inside to say how are we doing on the gender inclusive agenda. And I've kind of had some few questions that I wanted to share with you, which really are compiled from our audience. And I'll start with the first piece, which is the business imperative of gender diversity. And there is huge amounts of research that shows the correlation between a diverse workforce and innovation, a diverse workforce and productivity and business impact. But the reality, I still see that, a lot of it is about the talk. And I don't know how much of it is about changing the mindsets. So what is the business imperative from your point of view? And how deep you think that business imperative is understood by the business leaders today?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I think the reason why, inclusion, particularly when we talk about gender, doesn't really fulfill and live up to the expectations. And very often people may not walk the talk because we hear about this a lot, people come and speak about it a lot, but does it actually get done? And it's worth digging deeper, and we do the same out here. So coming to business imperative, and we'll start with that, I think there is no doubt in my mind that for building a really innovative organization, and an organization which is problem solving is in its DNA, you will need to be very diverse. For building an organization where everyone feels part of the go forward, the momentum, and feels scared. Again, I think at the top you will have to do a very good job with balance, and you'll have to do a good job with inclusion. So in my mind, there's just no question that these are directly linked. This is not a cost or a tax. This is indeed a means towards the end. We've seen that ourselves. Each time we've managed to get a senior and a mid-level leader, which has come from clearly the stronger and the more attractive sex, we've ended up with better decisions each time. That being said, there are challenges, and I think we've got to face those challenges. Today, why in our leadership team do we not have an equal representation of women? In fact, we don't have right now. We used to have one woman leader in the leadership team, and we don't. And, I have to be honest, we struggle with it. Yeah. There were at least recent three mandates over the last 2 years or 3 years when we were looking for leaders, really at the top apex team, what we call the leadership team or the L team. And in each of them, there was a clear directive given from my side as well as from my co-founder Rajesh's side and HR. In one time, it was actually an HR leader, and we said we should actually definitely look for a lady in this role, both for marketing as well as for HR. And then there was one more opening. And, we struggled. We met so many candidates. We really struggled. And we could not find, and we obviously didn't want to compromise with quality. Why should we? We just couldn't find the right fit. So the challenge is not necessarily the availability. Yeah. I think in our business, which is a very new age business with a very, very fast cadence, I think we're innovating all the time. We're moving fast all the time. Perhaps, and we are looking for leaders. So by definition, we're looking for someone who will be probably in their mid to late 30s and could be early 40s, just by definition, or older. I don't think at this level of position, we typically would look for 15 years of experience or thereabouts. So it'd be very hard to get
Yeah.
someone who'll be less than 30. Yeah. By definition, a lot of people would want more predictable, I think, work life, would want a more predictable kind of hours, etc., etc. And the reality is, in our businesses, that is still very often a dream. It's not so easy to get, especially at the top. You got to lead by example. And so I don't think we get the best of candidates. I think the best of candidates do tend to gravitate towards organizations which offer a better balance. I guess some of the multinationals, and maybe not the startups. And even though we're 16 years old, I still think in some ways we're still a startup. We just went through a very major transaction, which is a merger with the number 2 player in our space, Go Vivo and Redbus, and we are obviously on hyperdrive right now.
Yeah.
And there are no timings, there are no days, there are no weekends. So there's a lot of work going on for that. So I think that might deter people.
Yeah.
So I think we end up therefore not necessarily attracting the kind of talent we'd like to.
Yeah. So tell us.
And I speak for the I speak for the entire startup community. I think younger companies will feel even more. Because I know how they work. I know, we've been through that phase. We have some degree of stability now.
Yeah.
But, I think that's the challenge.
Yeah. So what's the solution in your mind, maybe looking at more longer term, saying that, okay, it can't happen today, but how are you looking at probably 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from today to change that? Because obviously it will not change overnight, but what's the strategy long term if you really see that that's an opportunity for you to work on?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that, Esther. So I think that is the right way to approach this, while we keep looking to get, as we call, laterals to come in at senior positions.
Correct.
What we are looking to do very actively is groom our internal leaders. So, and internal young managers with a lot of potential. So we call them high potential. We call them young leaders.
Yeah.
And actually, we're in the midst of a program that we're doing with Soil right now, where we're actually giving them the inputs required to groom them to go to the next level. And I'm speaking to the team in a couple of days for exactly that purpose, which is that, guys, you've got the potential. You've been earmarked as people who can go far. Thankfully, we have a large representation of women there, and we'd like to groom these leaders. And then, when you're in an organization, for the first, I think, couple of quarters, very often you're proving yourself.
Yeah.
And the organization is also checking you out. That's the reality. This happens in the first couple of quarters, and 6 months go before you know it. But when you've been in a company for a couple of years, you've already proven yourself. The organization knows exactly what you're capable of. You're considered a valued resource. That means you don't need to do anything extraordinary to prove yourself. Push harder. Just keep doing what you're doing. But now stop taking all operational decisions, move into strategic roles, because those are being offered to you. Start, actually deciding and taking big calls, and then having and grooming your team and letting them actually go ahead and execute on them. So I think this is the way, as we work on our pipeline and as we prepare these young leaders to take on bigger roles, and they'll be in a position where they're very settled in the company. They've been there a couple of years, if not more, 2 to 4 years. And then for them, they can actually bloom and blossom there. And then I guess a lot of flexibility, which, by the way, we do offer to our folks.
Correct.
But I think it oftentimes people are reluctant to take this, saying, how will it be seen if I avail, let's say, so I think we can take a week off to do flexi work from home, flexi timings, etc. And, people will think, hey, if I'm going to do this in the first couple of months of coming in, people would be wondering what we're doing. However, if you've been in a company and you want to work from home for whatever reason, this could be family, this could be personal, then we welcome that.
Correct.
And I think much easier.
Correct.
Even when it comes to something which is a very natural process, and I think we should all celebrate it. But when, a lady turns a mother and she gets a maternity leave, we offer an additional 3 months in certain circumstances where it's required. So you can actually go to 6 months, and which could be either fully paid or half paid. And that's great for people who want to come back.
Yeah.
And again, I think someone who just comes into the company and wants to avail of this, let's say the first year, I think both sides, there's going to be a little bit of uneasiness rather than you've been there for a few years. So I think we want to groom our leaders and really grow into this place and then be able to avail the best of the company.
Yeah. So tell me one thing, Deep, when you're looking at this high potential development, is there anything in particular that you're doing for your woman employees to really probably fulfill those needs as leadership development needs, which may be a little different from the male counterparts? Is there anything in particular that you're doing in terms of creating role models or building confidence or finding sponsors within the organization to support? Because, I mean, there's a lot of research that shows that women need some different interventions than men. And most of our leadership developments have been designed in a very male dominated ecosystem. So is there anything in particular that you are thinking of doing different?
Yeah, no, and it's a great point. At one level, what I'd like to say, we don't necessarily want to treat all of them very differently.
Yeah.
But you are right. There are certain requirements. And so what we've tried to do is to bring in leading women from the workplace to come in and talk to them and do workshops. So one of the people we got in, and I think one of the most successful ladies and quite an amazing manager in herself, is Irina Victor.
Yeah.
So Irina also an advisor. She's a board of advisors. And she came and she spent a lot of time with our high potential ladies. And she stayed in touch. So it wasn't just a one time she came in and spent a couple of hours. She stayed in touch. So these women reached out to her from time to time saying, hey, this is the challenge I'm facing.
Yeah.
And she's done a great job in responding to them. I know we have a couple of more planned, but we are again looking at role models who have succeeded in the most competitive of jobs.
Yeah.
Irina has an amazing career, both from McKinsey, Nestle, and other places. And, she's, I think, a great person to talk about this. And similarly, we are looking at others. And actually, I think we should have you over at some point in time to come and talk to us. So, yeah.
It will be my pleasure. So which other roadblocks you see? So one is about having role models and enough role models. So in your case, you're bringing people from outside, but probably leveraging the internal role models as well. The second piece that you spoke about was about creating that flexibility in policies, which is not specifically for women, but it's really about creating that flexible workplace. If you really reflect back and you say, why don't we have more women in our top positions today? What are the other roadblocks that you think happen, which are historically because, eventually we're men in the workplace for so many years and we're trying to change those numbers, but those numbers won't change overnight. So what are the other roadblocks that you see, not only MakeMyTrip, but overall that you see as a business leader?
Yeah, let me talk about ourselves first. And I
Sure.
don't think we can absolve completely. I mean, I think very few companies can, and maybe ICICI in their prime could talk about being like, listen, we actually, the minority is the men in the leadership team, which is phenomenal. I mean, just look at how beautifully that model is played out. I actually know some of those ladies. I do some work with Renuka now in her fund. And I know Shikha, who's leading Axis Bank, and they're just incredible leaders. I also know Kalpana, who's JP Morgan, and I can't believe they all came from the same pack. So that's really, I think, if there's one leading light, it has to be ICICI, and full credit to Kamath sir to invest in these ladies, give them the roles, and then really let them fly. And now Chanda, of course, leads. So I think it can be done, and maybe one can argue banking is different, but I started my career as a banker, and I can. It's not it can be as difficult. It just comes down to the individual.
Sure.
And these are highly qualified, highly driven individuals, and most of them also, I mean, very successful on the personal side as well. So it can be done. When it comes to us, I don't think there is any roadblock in the mind.
Yeah.
In fact, if there's one thing, the entire leadership team, we feel it's missing. I'll give you an example. So we did our strategy workshop, and we did our first integration kickoff workshop of the leadership team from both sides. We were 11 of us from MakeMyTrip. We were 5 people from GoIB. We were 2 people from Redbus, and a couple of days. And we did it with a lady, and we couldn't find a better person, I think, to do it with. So I think we realized what we are missing.
Yeah.
Each time, let's just talk about business decisions, segmentation, how we're going after a certain market when it comes to marketing for sure. we have to ensure, like, we had a recent pretty successful ad campaign. We ensured that we will have enough representation from women to even say, how is this ad going to be seen by women? Because a very large number of our customers, and especially our influencers, happen to be women. And otherwise, we're missing the point if we're not doing that. So I don't think there's any roadblock in the mind.
Yeah.
Like I did say upfront, admittedly, startup culture can be pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
I think can be quite crazy. And that I think is, I think it's more perception. I would love, by virtue of this recording and this video, and I know you're going to show it with the right forum, I really, really want to get to change the perception, because we would want to get women leaders in our fold, and it's clearly not happened when we put out a search for 3 positions. So hopefully this will help us reach out, and at all levels, whether it's leadership team, whether it's director level, senior manager level, managerial level, etc. We've done quite well, I think, in the middle. Our overall diversity is now about 30%, which is not bad. It could be much better. In addition to that, I think we've done a great job with a program which is MakeMyTrip and Yet Not on Roll. So this is the holiday expert program. We have 650 women. We've touched over 1,000, but 650 women who are actually home experts for us, holiday ambassadors. They're actually selling our product. They log into the system purely at their convenient time from home. They just need to come in for training for a week at MakeMyTrip, and then after that, they're given all the tools to work. They have a software where they can log into. They get all the leads from us, and then they can service their customers from wherever they are on email and call, and make a good amount of money. Some of them, I actually think it's become a very, very profitable line for them. And we're looking to grow that line. So we think Home Experts has been very, very successful, and we clearly can do more out there. So yeah, I think coming from us, I don't think there's any real roadblock. It's perceptional now. But I can tell you, for the startup community, there are certain challenges up front, and if people can deal with them, that's fine. But if you look at other companies, I have to give credit to the multinationals. I think they've done a really good job. We work very closely with some of them, whether it's American Express. We work closely with some of the other banks. We know people through some of our just interactions, etc. When we look at companies like Hewitt or Mercer, etc., I think they've done a pretty good job. So we've got to give them credit for a very balanced kind of workforce out there on top.
So what do you think they've done successfully to be able to build more leaders at the top level? Anything in particular that you say that these are the 2-3 things that I've seen that they have done well to have that output of having more women across the board?
Yeah, so I think mandating is one way, but I think more than mandating, you've got to create that culture. So I think, more begets more kind of thing. So if you're a multinational and you have this as a very successful kind of model in, let's say, your head office or other parts of the world, then you socialize that. You get those leaders in here to talk about it. So it does help a lot. If you start up first time and you got to do it, it's tougher. And that's why I keep coming back to someone like ICICI and say, that was fantastic. And, now willy-nilly, you're going to see that happen in each of the places these people are going in, because at the end of the day, it's been proven by research that you have higher productivity, higher efficiency, higher integrity in terms of just overall. And, so I think net, it's been proven that women tend to be far more valuable employees and more productive in the long term. So I think these companies have done a good job by actually saying we are going to have X percentage of women representation across the board.
Correct.
And then you have to go harder, you have to try harder.
Correct.
Perhaps a lot of the Indian companies haven't done that with the same amount of rigor, and perhaps that's what we need to do. But the reality is, and you started this company here when it was young. The reality is, in the early days, it's hand to mouth. And you don't have luxury sometimes of saying, no, we found someone, we know that he fits the bill, but hang on, we needed a lady. So I'm sorry, we're going to reject, we're going to keep looking. You don't have the luxury. You want to hire as of yesterday.
Correct.
So I think as companies mature, and I think we are now at the point where we should be able to plan better and say up, let's spend more time, let's dig deeper, and also let's get the message out. Let's say that, listen, very welcome. And today the reality is at senior levels, at least at our company, and I'm sure at many others, you can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
People are working from home. People are working from their cars. People are working from vacation. The reality is not about your hours in office
Yeah.
that you're putting in. Even at here, even a lot of my colleagues have already got into a cadence where they're saying, hey, we'd like to get home for dinner, which I think is a very normal expectation. And I like to do that, be with my family. And then either as habit on a daily basis or as and when there's work, we'll log on for an hour or whatever it takes late evening. So we'll probably eat into our sleeping time or TV time, but at least we're there for, those critical couple of hours, 2 hours that you get with the family,
Correct.
typically around, etc. So I think that's very acceptable. I know people who work, again, some people love to work very early in the morning and get done for the day. Some people want to catch up at night, which is fine. I think we are all very focused nowadays about output.
Yeah.
And so really it won't be about hours at work. I don't think, except if you work in maybe a highly intensive operational company, a call center, etc., where and you have a role which is operational and you need to be right there. Most other places, I don't think that's the requirement at all.
Yeah. So you said something about whether organizations should mandate a particular ratio, or it should be a guideline, or it should be something that you socialize. What's your point of view in terms of, what are the strengths and weaknesses of each philosophy? Because obviously there's no right or wrong. What do you think, mandating vis-a-vis creating a guideline? What are the plus and minuses, and what do you think will really move the needle?
Yeah, no, I think if we recognize the factor, and I don't know the average across, let's say, if we were to take the top 1,000 companies of India, what's the average at every level?
Correct.
And I'm pretty sure at senior levels, it's not a very healthy number.
Absolutely.
So I think it'll need to be definitely a hard push, and it can't be lip service alone. So I think companies who are serious about this, and they're going to gain. That's the reality. They are definitely going to gain in the long run. They're going to gain. Actually, you'll see impact way. And so I would tend to favor, I think at least initially to get to certain levels. So there's got to be a minimum threshold where you might want to mandate it. And then after that, it's good to have. And then it could be more like softer guidelines.
Yeah.
I mean, after that, it should be a flyway. After that, you should see the results. And it should be something where then it says, hey, this is great. This is working for us. I mean, this probably is, we need to do more of this.
Yeah. So
don't forget that also becomes the magnet then for attracting more and more talent to come in.
Yeah.
Because where would young managers, ladies like to go and work? Where they see in a company very clearly,
that's right.
Hey, this company is, I've got a great path. I can see a path out there. This company, it's not like there's a glass ceiling or anything, and this is where I'll go till. So I think it's critical that you start at the top.
Sure.
Only then we send the right messaging, and then they'll become the natural magnets.
Yeah. So I think one of the things when I speak to other business leaders and HR professionals about that change, and because it's a huge transformational change that organizations are going through, there are really three levers here. One, you spoke about the workplace, the culture, the policies, and so on and so forth. That's one lever that you have as a business leader. The second one is, what work are you doing with the men in particularly? Because obviously as part of the equation is not only what we're doing with the woman, but also what are we doing with every single individual in the organization who has to work with woman as well, and what are you doing with the woman in particular? So you kind of cover already what are you doing with the woman by bringing role models in. You also cover what are you doing with the ecosystem by building more policies and really trying to put guidelines and frameworks. Tell us a little bit about what are your ideas about what are you doing with the men, because especially when you have a workplace which has more men, especially at the top, do you think there is something to be done with the men as well to be able to participate in that journey of becoming more inclusive?
I think it's about sensitizing.
Yeah.
And I think the key is out there about sensitizing and making them appreciate the impact one would have with a more balanced kind of gender bias, gender kind of balance in the company.
Yeah.
And so that I don't think needs to be sold too hard. I think they've got to see it. Let's face it, leaders at a certain age and stage of life, they will only believe it if they're convinced, and they're convinced by data.
Yeah.
So I think data can be used very, very strongly out here, and we've got to make really good kind of folklore of the good stories out there, and there are many, many, and that's why we turn to People Matters and other organizations. So let's talk about those, let's celebrate, and tell us those stories which have worked in young organizations. And I remember meeting Sheryl Sandberg, and it was amazing to talk about how what she's just a unique person, right? So she's managed to go through all kinds of difficulties and still stay on top and at the helm. And then there are others. So whether it's Meg Whitman, whether there are others. So I think we need to understand that these are stereotypes in our mind, and it can be changed, and talk about those stories, and that sensitizing will happen. So I think it's got to happen by showing really good examples and stories.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Deep. So my last question before we close, if you could go back in time, and you said so beautifully, and I resonate so much. When you start in your early days, is hand to mouth. So really, you don't have the luxury to really think long term, and whether the decisions you're taking today are going to be problems that you have to solve tomorrow. But if you could go back in time, especially addressing those entrepreneurs that are building teams in the early days, what you would have done differently? What will be your advice for organizations that are starting up to say, how to build a more diverse, not only gender-wise, but how to build a more diverse team?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I oftentimes say if I was to start all over again, I would start with one co-founder. I was naive enough to start alone, but then I think I was lucky and then smart enough to hold on to 2, 3 great guys who came along the way and make them co-founders. But if I was to start again, I'd start with as a team of 2. Me and one more person with complementary skills, and we'd look at the other co-founder. I think 3 is a crowd, 3 is when politics start, but 2 is just perfect. I'm very, I like, and maybe that second person, then the complementary skills and sensibilities should have ideally been a woman, and maybe that would be the perfect start. If you can't get that right, then in the very early stages, I think you want to get a couple of senior leaders, definitely to represent the ladies segment as well. We used to have that actually in our early days at our VP level. We had a very senior leader in travel, Kiran Jyoti, who was there, and then even later in marketing we had Gayatri. So we had some leaders, but I think one has got to, as one grows, also make sure that at all levels, at the top especially, and then it'll flow through, you have representation. I think I would sure that we'd be tougher about that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Deep. Thanks so much for your time. It's been always a pleasure speaking to you, learning from you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lovely chat.
Wonderful.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.